Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another tops and flops video on this 1st of June. It's time to look back on my reading in May, which was kind of, I was so busy at work that I couldn't really find the time or the energy or the mental space to read a lot I'm still reading a lot, but for my own purposes, it was not that good of a reading month. But anyway, tops and flops, in which I talk about the best and the worst of each month. You know the drill. And as always, we start with the tops. And as always, within the tops, we start with the book that surprised me the most. And this was a buddy read with Kim from Middle of the Book March and Anne Wright, actress, published in 2020. I think it was longlisted for one of the major book prizes, Booker or Women's Prize or something. And Anne Wright is an Irish author, and I always love Irish literature. And this book was also on the 1001 Women list, so the books by women, the 1001 books by women that I have to read before I die. That was one of the reasons that I picked it. I think it was if I can trust Goodreads, it was my second Anne Wright, but I have no recollection whatsoever about the book that I marked as read. And I couldn't find it in the bookcase, so maybe it was a mistake. Anyway, this is a book about set in Ireland, partly during the Troubles, and it is a daughter looking back on the life of her mother, and her mother was a famous actress. Why did this book surprise me so much? Because if you had told me the major points of the book, it's about a mother-daughter relationship. It's about the life of an actress, and there are a lot of other actors in it. It is jumping back and forth in time. A couple of those markers that normally make me say, nope, not a book for me. I'm not interested in actors or actresses, just not. For some reason, mother-daughter stories, I have read quite a bit, a lot of mother-daughters, and I'm just not interested, maybe anymore, but it's just nothing that really grips me. It's like the Connecticut divorce kind of thing. It just doesn't grip me. The jumping back and forth in time, all that. And I still really, really enjoyed the book. And that was, I would say, for 80% because of the language. Anne Wright can just really tell a story. It's not that her writing is extremely beautiful or poetic or what have you, but it has this incredible natural flow to it. So she tells a story in a non-linear way, jumping from this to that, talking about a birthday party, and from there she goes to some other event, and then in the voice of the daughter, and it's so natural. It flows just so naturally that it's amazing. It's just an amazing joy to read this book, even though the story didn't engage me that much, and that's why this book made it on the tops list, the book that surprised me the most. Then next in the tops is always the book that I thought about the most, and I've talked about this book already quite a bit, and that is Two Old Women by Velma Wallace, published in the 1990s. And this was the Book Cougars' choice for the group read in the second quarter. I will leave a link to the Book Cougars Goodreads page. You can find all the information. Basically, it's two women, Chris and Emily, and they have a podcast and they talk about books. And I love them. They do such brilliant podcasts and talking about books. And they also have group reads. So this is the retelling, very briefly, because like I said, I talked about this book already, the retelling of an Alaskan legend about two old women in a tribe, and it's a very harsh winter, and the two women are left behind to die because the tribe doesn't have enough food. That's really briefly what this is about. And then it's the two women, and you can already see from courage and survival that they won't die. I mean, they will die at some point because they're old, but and why did I think about that book so much? It's one of the topics in the book that I talked about already in my review, and that is that the two women tell themselves also, when they were left alone and they now have to fight for survival, that they can do more than they thought they could. And they kind of, chastise themselves for having complained so much when they were still living in the tribe about their pain and aches, and about they couldn't really walk that fast anymore, and they needed a stick, and just the one woman is 80 and one is in her 70s, so they are definitely old. And I felt, and a lot of you agreed with me back then when I reviewed the book, that if you're really old, you have earned the right to complain about stuff if you can't walk properly. If I look at my mom, she's 91 and she can hardly walk. And not that she complains all the time, but she has the right to complain about that. But on the other hand, I mean, I'm older myself. I'm in my 60s, so there is this balance that when you get older, I think that you need to find between accepting certain things that are just not possible anymore. I can't do ballet the way I did, 40 years ago, and I will never, ever be able to do that again. And I have to accept that fact. But at the same time, you shouldn't just, slump down and not try to improve. So I had a knee injury two years ago, the meniscus, and I felt, when I look back now, I felt that I could have done more in order to improve, and maybe, not stop too early just because it hurts a little. But on the other hand, you shouldn't force yourself too much, certainly not with the meniscus, because that doesn't help. So this balance that you have to find when you get older really interests me, and I also think it's difficult to find the right one, to see what you can push yourself with, also intellectually. If learning a new language, for instance, is not as easy anymore when you are a certain age, but it's still possible. But on the other hand, maybe, ballet, it's still possible to do something, but not, you see what I mean? That's why this book is on the list of the book that I thought about the most, because this is really something that resonates with me personally, but also I think is a general topic that is really interesting and worth thinking about. And the last book in the tops always is the best nonfiction book. And that was another Buddyread, this time with Heidi from My Reading Life. And we read Elizabeth Colbert, Under a White Sky, The Nature of the Future, or something, the subtitle is. You will see it here. And this is a book about not only climate change, but also the effect humans had on nature and what they try to do in order to remedy it. So it looks at when we changed the flow of a river, what that meant, and what then people do in order to remedy the ramifications, the negative ramifications that had, or when a species is about to be extinct, and how we deal with that, how we deal with the possible ramification of climate change, what we could do and what scientists have come up with so far, and whether it works and whether it doesn't work. So it looks at all types of scientific, not so much research, but scientific or scientifically based remedies of stuff that we did to nature, and not in a good way. So that is really a topic that is very interesting. But what makes, I feel, Elizabeth Kolbert such an exceptional nature writer, or writer about, she mostly writes about, climate change and ramifications. I love the word ramification in this video, that's for sure. So the consequences of human actions on, biodiversity and things like that. You might have, I think her most famous book is probably Sixth Extinction, and this one is an earlier one. But anyway, that's not the point. I'm digressing. The point is, what makes her, for me, such an exceptional writer about these topics is that she can explain scientific things in a way that I understand them, and I'm not a scientist. And because I buddy-read it with Heidi, who is a scientist, she can still engage people who know their stuff about science. So it's, I think, a very rare combination of a writer who can have this broad access to the reading public, that you have readers like me. I'm not a dumb person, but I'm not a scientist, so she needs to explain stuff with me in a way that doesn't bore me and that I can understand. But at the same time, she can engage people like Heidi, who is a scientist. And I think that's a really rare, very rare quality. And that's why this book made it, without any doubt, on the list of the best nonfiction of the month. So those are, yes, the tops. And now on to the flops. And I only have one. And I really hated that book. So it needs some time for me to talk about it. And that is Out by Natsuo Karino, published in Japan in the 1990s, 1995, I think, translated into English by Stephen Snyder, and then published 2005, if I'm not mistaken. Let me have a look. Yes, 2005, and it was 1997. The Japanese original. It's a crime book, and I read this also as a buddy read with Kim. She hated it. She bailed. You probably have seen her review already. I read it until the end, and I really, really thought it was a very bad book in terms of, for instance, sexism. So what is it about? It's about a group of women working the graveyard shift in a food packing factory. They are between their mid-30s and their mid-50s, a variety of backgrounds. One is taking care of her mother, the other one has an abusive husband, married with children who are difficult. So it's not, they don't live a good life. And at a certain point at the beginning of the book, one of them kills her husband and then asks the others to help her get rid of the body. And then the story develops from there. That's not a spoiler. That's, on the blurb even. This was hailed as a feminist thriller. Well, let me tell you something. Little secret. It's not a feminist book just because abuse is talked about, or rape, or harassment, sexual or otherwise, of women. Just because the topics are brought up doesn't make it a feminist book. A feminist book would mean that you address these topics in a certain way, and not in the way that this author addresses them. Because if I just make the example of rape, it's talked about from the women's perspective, and all the women, there's no difference. So it is really internalized misogyny by the author, I would say, projected on those women, because they talk about rape in terms of, yeah, well, I don't get raped, I'm old and ugly. The young women, of course, they get raped. There is this idea that one of the characters kind of falls in love with her rapist during the rape. No. So there is this really underlying, like I said, internalized misogyny, which I can't stand. And I'm not saying that you can't have a character, a female character, who displays that. But if it's not the individualized character that has this trait, but if it's throughout the book, a red thread throughout the book, because that's the way women are, if that is the message, no. So I was really, really angered by this book, and I can't, by the life of me, can't understand why people would call it a feminist thriller. That is one thing. Then there is also the irk of, not giving a shit and not doing the work. Neither the author, nor the translator, nor the editor, or the publisher. There's a Brazilian man, or a couple of Brazilian men in the book, and they are the low caste in that society. They are immigrants, they are, frowned upon, they are harassed, they are discriminated against. So there is this racism theme between the white Japanese people and the Brazilian immigrants, which is interesting. And one of those immigrants tells his backstory, where he comes from, Sao Paulo in Brazil, and yes, just please, author, publisher, translator, and editor, I'm going to put the book down. This is how you spell Sao Paulo. Because it's the Brazilian, the Portuguese way of saying St. Paul, and it's not spelled Paolo. No, it's not, because it's from Paul. And if you do that like 25 times in a book, you just don't give a shit, and you don't do the work. And that, even if it had been a feminist thriller, this would have been a reason for me to just throw the book away, because I feel it also says something about the maybe inherent racism against Brazilian people of the author, if she doesn't even care enough to look up how you actually spell one of the major cities in Brazil. Anyway, 18 minutes. This was enough of a rant. So here you go. These were my tops and flops of the month of May. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments very much, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.